What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Slaughter podcast. Today, I am joined by my usual co-host, Charles. We also have Brett Lanpher, and we have a special guest. Before I bring him in, I'm just going to say he's one of my favorite opponents to play against on TTS. He's one of the funniest guys, one of the classiest opponents, and a tremendous A Song of Ice and Fire player to boot. So everyone welcome Rossi to the show. Say hi.
Hi. Thanks for being here.
Tell everyone where you're from, how long you've been playing the game, and maybe go into a little bit of background on the gaming group that you were with.
Okay. Currently, I'm part of the Tabletop Ones game group. I was starting with the Privateer Poser Boys near Cologne. This is a funny story. 1 year ago, I was in a mood to play another game, and I joined the new club. And I don't know Song of Ice and Fire. I watched the series, but I did not know anything about this game. 2 weeks later, a guy was telling me, okay, he was resigning, and if I want to play his army. And I said, yeah, why not? And it was Starks.
Of course.
I think I played 3 or 4 games, and I start winning, and I won, I think, the next 8 or 10 games. And I thought, whoa, I'm really, really good. And it goes on. I was playing one tournament. It was good success. I go on the 3rd place. And the coronavirus was coming up, and I thought, okay, this is a great way to change my faction. So after 120 games of Starks, I changed my main faction to Lannister, and I lost the first 20 or 30 games in a row. And then I realized I was not that good. I was never playing the Mountain That Rides, never. I did not know that this model was existing. And I played Lannister, I think, 150 games nearly, and in TTS altogether, I don't know. I don't know anymore.
But I mean, that's just a testament of how strong Starks are right now. If you start the game with them, you place 3rd place in a tournament, and then you start playing Lannisters, and then it's totally different.
It is.
So what attracted you to the game? Were you a war gamer before you started playing this game? Were you familiar with like Warhammer or any of those games?
I started with Warhammer, but just with a few friends, 3 friends. We played once a month, and just casual.
We all know that you're a good player. I think currently you're number 5 in the world in the stats ranking right now.
Congratulations to Bizenko. He beat me 2 days ago with Mother of Dragons. And yeah, I blame myself. I did many mistakes.
This is very relevant for the topic that we have that we're going to be talking about today on the podcast. Before we get into it, me, you, and Weasel, and Brett actually all took losses in the World Cup. So we're going to have a lot to talk about today as far as that goes. But let me turn it over to Charles, and why don't you go ahead and introduce the audience to the topic that we're going to be talking about today, because it was your idea, and I thought it was a very good one.
Yeah, so today I wanted to talk about how to unpack a loss and learn from it. You hear from a lot of content creators and top-tier players not to blame things like luck when you lose. And sometimes it feels like you lost strictly because your opponent failed less panic checks than you, or you didn't get the card you need, or, usually you blow someone up with Knights of Casterly Rock and they lived. But ultimately, if you look back and then the entire game hinged on one successful counterplot or one successful panic check, you probably weren't actually in control of that game from a lot of reasons. And it's important to know when that happens, how to unpack that. Because, yes, sometimes at the top table with two competitive lists and two equally skilled players, a lot of times the player who wins got luckier and got a few more gas cards out their deck or a few more clutch armor saves. However, if you assume on any given day that the matchups aren't exactly perfect or not exactly symmetrical, then there is some skill set you should have been able to leverage to minimize that luck value. Okay. And it's really hard in the heat of the moment to unpack that, right? And that is very similar to what my loss was like this week. And I brought the topic up because I refuse to accept that I got diced out, right? And that's important because, especially in Ice and Fire in tournament play, because the margin you win by matters in your tournament points. So even if I got diced out, I shouldn't have gotten blown out, and I got blown out. And even in equally close games, if I can eliminate dice and control the game, even games I should normally win because I am rolling better, I should win by more, which is also important because I'm in a stronger command of the game. So I wanted to bring it up to talk about that and get a few other people's perspective on how they do that. And it also comes into play with how you assess units, not blaming luck on the game and understanding where your mistakes were with some units specifically. Because there's times you win the game, but this unit felt terrible because it didn't do anything. For instance, in my game, I lost, and a big part of the reason why I lost was that I didn't actually use my spear wives with Jarl very well. They didn't get into the game at all. They were pretty much irrelevant. So I deployed them in the flank on around turn 3, which was really on cue to threaten my unit opponent's trappers. I was playing the mirror, and then I waited and I did my activations in a weird order because I got misjudged. I made a mistake. I activated and prioritized the wrong things. And ultimately, he was able to just march away from my spear wives and then start kiting them with traps, right? Which I should know as a free folk player, free folk 101, is that if you're going to attempt to engage trappers, just get it over with. Because if they get to kite you and run away from you, they will win that exchange because they get auto wounds on your advance, and then they likely get to shoot you. And they're speed 6, so they're faster than my spear wives at speed 5. So that was a big mistake, right? Even though it looked like I played it by the script and things like that, I made a mistake, and my opponent was able to capitalize on it by denying me the value of that 5-point unit. 4 points for spear wives and 1 point for Jarl, as well as the activation to put them on the board. Now means less. So now I'm effectively down 2 activations, and that's a huge tempo swing no matter what faction you're playing. So those are good examples of, despite the fact that my opponent maybe did other things better than me that were luck-based, I did not help myself by basically isolating my own unit. I did it for them. And that was a mistake. And honestly, was that the mistake that cost me the game? Probably not in a vacuum, but it's a very important mistake when considering maybe I dropped the wrong list. Maybe this list is bad. Maybe this unit is bad. So one of the things I wanted to point out was that there's always something you can unpack and discuss with everybody. And also in terms of like assessing units, which is going to be important with the rebalance when new units are coming out, is understanding that, is this unit meant to be a unit that is a frontline unit? If I feel like it's bad because it keeps getting blown up off the table, but I also keep taking charges to the face with it, let's say it's Bastard Girls, then honestly, it's not that Bastard Girls are bad. They're one of the best units in the game. I'm not supposed to be getting charged if I'm the Bastard Girls player. I'm
Right.
supposed to be doing the charging. And it's important to know that when you have your lists in play, right? So one of our patrons pointed out as well that, go into your matchups with an idea that this unit is meant to be hold a zone, or this unit is meant to be for zoning my opponent. It's the counter punch and poke and prod, like say Stark Bowman, right? They're not meant to take the charge. They're meant there to be a threat and kind of zone people, and things like that. And that's something Rossi does very well. He's a very conservative player, so he assesses his units, I'm sure, based on the role they're supposed to play. So you have to make sure you're being honest with yourself that the reason that unit underperformed wasn't because you just didn't use them correctly. It's very, very important for new players coming into competitive play to understand that. If they test lists they see winning on TTS events and things like that, it's not that the list is bad or that you're a bad player necessarily. You may not understand the role those units play. And it's important to try to understand that when you approach the game, or else you're not going to value a lot of things very well. If the thing's job is to hold a zone, it needs to have skills and points invested in things that hold zones. If it's meant to be a killer, you need to make sure you go all in on it being a killer. But also understand what its threat ranges are. If you're relying on critical blow, you probably should wound the unit you're going to charge first with something else before you bet on critical blow. There's ways you can hedge your bets. There's ways you can sculpt the battlefield and control the tempo. And that's what I mean in other podcasts that I mentioned things like space, pace of the game, and understanding fundamentals. All that comes into play in assessment because there should always be something you can take away from that. Now, Rossi, I know you're playing Starks right now, but I also know you're a very competent Night's Watch player as well. And I feel like Night's Watch is a really good example of how to assess units. And I hear how you kind of critique your own list and their own performance.
That's funny because Nightwatch currently in the meta we're playing just exists with 3 units. Trappers, Raiders, Mammoths. Nothing more, nothing less. I think that's a very good point to see which unit fits to which position and where you want to take this in the end of the game or in the middle of the game. But it's also to know which terrain fits the army most. If you play a lot of trappers, for example, you want to have some palisade or something to hide behind, such like this, or have cards in your hand that doesn't fit you, just throw it away, such like this. To become a better player, I think there are multiple solutions where you can progress and proceed.
There definitely was a lot to unpack there with Charles's assessment of evaluating your list and looking at the game state, but a lot of the game comes down to luck. One thing I've realized since this is my first war game is trying to take out luck as much as you can, trying to mitigate the risk. And Charles, you did mention that Rossi is sort of known to be a bit more of a conservative player. And if some of you have watched the 4.5-hour match that he had against Foryoku, it was a stark mirror match, and no one really wanted to make that first move. Why do you think it's important to assess the risk in the situation that you're in, Rossi, when it comes to playing this game?
I think it's the most important thing to evaluate if you're ahead or behind in a game. When you're starting a game and you're thinking, okay, he's playing Stark, he's playing a Howland list, for example. He's 10% ahead because he don't have to spend any points for NCUs, so his army is much more stronger. And you have to realize if you're ahead or behind. If you're behind, you have to do something against it to make more risky moves and engaging better. Try to minimize your risk with your positioning. And I think that's it. Positioning is everything.
All right, Brett. So we're going to have you hop in here. You also took a loss this week. You don't have to go in depth on how you lost, but maybe go into how you're walking away from that match and what you're going to be doing for your next match.
Initially I was really frustrated, and I talked to you guys, obviously, in the Sunday Slaughter. I didn't do a whole lot of talking to most other people about this. I was just a little bit agitated. For those who didn't watch the game, it essentially came down to one dice roll. Literally one panic test determined the winner. But as Charles said, if you've put yourself in the position where one single dice roll can determine the win or the loss, you've probably played the game wrong. After evaluating this game a little bit more and checking out of this mentality of, well, I just needed to pass this dice. I just needed to pass this panic test. I had an 84% chance to pass it. And, so just on that statistic, 5 out of 6 times I should win this game, and I just got the bad draw. Once I look past that, just like Charles said, I've calmed down a little bit. I've accepted that the situation is what the situation is, and now I've gone back and thought about some key moments. And I think just letting the psychology of the game get to you is a big part of playing this game. I've preached it when I was a Tyrion player. I used to play nothing but Tyrion Lannisters, and a big part of my game, aside from manipulating cards and doing things like this, one of the biggest parts of my game and one of my best plans was to frustrate my opponent. Not necessarily to make him angry and to have a bad game in that sense, but if you get inside your opponent's head and you frustrate them so badly by shutting down their plays, taking the crown zone when it's not necessarily in your best interest, but you have intrigue and subterfuge just to dump more cards. And I remember specifically, I played one of Indy's best Stark players, and in that game, he played 11 cards the entire length of the game. I stopped 9 of them by Tyrion's order counterplot and using intrigue to dump his cards. He got to play 2 cards the whole game. He was very frustrated, and at that point, he just started making very bad decisions. And if you can trick your opponent into making bad decisions by getting inside of your head, you've probably already won the game. And that's essentially what happened. I was so frustrated with fighting these flayed men that, mentally, I know better than this because I know I play so many games. I probably play as much as Chris and Rossi, maybe more, maybe up 8 or 9 games a week is what I normally play. That's a lot. And so I know how to win this game. I know what you need to do to win this game. And I just let him tilt me so badly, whether he meant to or not, that I was so frustrated with what was happening in the middle of the battlefield. I had the cards in my hand to take control of the situation. I had the opportunity to retreat my sworn swords from the Flademan engagement and go engage the unit to stop them from scoring 2 points. And at the end of the day, that's a very simple choice to make. Stop a unit from scoring 2 or kill a unit that's worth 1. And at the end of the day, it was things like this that cost me this game. Some of that frustration just piling onto these Flademen that just didn't want to die. You can blame the dice in that situation. They should have been dead. Probably so. But once it becomes apparent that it's not going your way, instead of me revising my plan and thinking, well, how can I win this game outside of just killing combat units? This is Winds of Winter. I don't have to table him to win. I can play these missions to win. I can do things to deny him points. I didn't have to kill his Stormcrow archers in the round that I killed them. If I hadn't killed the Stormcrow archers in the round that I killed them, my Berserkers wouldn't have been worth 2 extra points. I had the play. Whether I took it at that moment or the next round, it really made no difference. So that was just another case of me being frustrated and just going full throttle when I didn't have to. So from my end, I let some of the psychology and frustration of the game get to me and force me to make bad decisions. On top of that, I think you guys know Ray, our Deep Math, is a phenomenal player. So it was going to be a tough battle no matter what. He makes nearly no mistakes because he analyzes everything and knows his risks. So I needed to play a better game than I did. And so going into next week, I play Ariakis, who is another brilliant player. So I'm going to have to really make sure that I just evaluate every single move and every single thing that I do. And I need to think to what I need to do to win this game besides just killing stuff. Just because I'm playing Starks doesn't mean you have to always kill stuff. You can win the game without killing a bunch of combat units.
So one thing I've had the luxury of, because I've had a few of my matches streamed since I started playing on TTS, is the luxury of looking back on a match and figuring out what I did wrong when I lost. It's easy when you're sitting there and saying, oh, if I would have not rolled a 1 on that charge, I would have been in a better spot, or I would have won the game. But one thing I should be doing better, I think, is assessing that risk and thinking about what can be done if I do roll that 1. Do I have a backup plan? Is there a way out from that? What do I stand to lose from bad luck? So, Charles, have you ever been in that situation before? Are you a player that is able to see 2-3 moves ahead and sort of dig yourself out of a hole?
Generally speaking, I'll do a hashtag humble brag. I try to stay pretty far ahead of the turns. It's actually very important when you play Free Folk because piece trading in advance is a very big part of how you toe that line between winning and losing horribly with insignificant spam, which is what I think you're kind of feeling a little bit since you've been playing some Free Folk. But yeah, it's one of those things where like a lot of times you do have to exactly that, make the assessment. With Free Folk, we don't have a high initial damage output. So the question is, am I charging just to tie that unit up, or am I charging because I think I can kill it? 9 out of 10 times the answer is just to tie it up, get some damage in and tie it up. So in some cases it's easier to make those decisions with Free Folk because I'm not expecting a major like kill into a good fortunate search fourth positioning and things like that. I did find myself falling into that trap a lot more when I played Gregor and Lannisters in ELO events, because I didn't have as many outs and I didn't have as many units to make up for it. So I do definitely understand that, and that is part of why I got a bit better about it. But yes, you do have to try, and that's where space comes into play a lot in my comments. And like Rossi said, positioning is huge because choosing when and where you want to be greatly changes what you can do if you roll that 1, right? If you roll that 1, you don't kill that unit. Do you have any other units in position to support them and clean it up? Or does that open a flank up for a charge on the backside and maybe they kill your commander, scoring an objective? So it's one of the reasons why activations are also so highly valued in this game. Is basically you check down a turn so you can think about where you need to be. So that when you finally do make that pivotal charge on that for that round, in some cases there's really only one really important charge per round per side. You need to have everything else in place just in case it does not go in according to plan. So that the next round you have the best chance for success. So almost every round you're planning your next round, and all you're really doing is executing the plan you came up with from the previous round. That is pretty much how this game is played across all factions.
Rossi, you just mentioned in our live chat that you try to record every TTS game that you play, which is pretty ambitious, but I can see the benefit of doing something like that. Is there a reason why you go out of your way to do that?
I think in every game there are crucial moments. Everybody knows maybe the virus didn't work, or I lost this panic check, or one wound remaining on such a unit or such like this. I believe this is usually not necessary because when you're playing an additional card, you just could make sure that this unit could die or not. And when I'm about my analyze for this video all the time, I think about I was so huge ahead. Why did I do this? To learn about my mistakes, to see what I can do the next time much better.
It was interesting that you said you started with Starks and you did really well with them, and then you started playing Lannisters and it was a totally different story. So what sort of turned the tables and start winning with Lannisters? Was it a matter of looking at the lists that you were playing? Were you was it just the fact that you were new to the faction? Like how did you start winning with a faction that wasn't Starks?
Starks is all about activation. The activations are so important that you go every time for the last turn, first turn things. You know what I mean? No, you're just go. You're activating your last unit. You're just moving forward. Maybe playing some sudden charge, going in, and then using the sword to making the attack and finish the unit. And this gives you a huge lead, and you will win this game just because you're 7 points ahead or such like that. With Lannister, you can't do this. Maybe when you're playing Therion, you can do this, or with Barrow and the one card. What does it mean to survive? Because the wounds are just something.
Protection of the father.
Yeah. Thank you very much. The game with Lannister changed from okay, I have to activate them out to I have disable my opponent to charge me, to move my units into positions where he can do whatever he wants. Okay, when he's playing Swift Advance, okay, I'm just screwed. But if he don't have this card, he cannot charge me. And in the next turn, I could activate and charge him if I want. So to give you just better options and use the terrain is much more important for Lannister than for Starks, from my personal point of view.
Bring it over to Brett. You are sort of like me. You're a faction jumper. We all know you for playing Night's Watch, and you won Gen Con with Lannisters, and there is some talks that you're going to be running a totally different faction for Adepticon. I'm not going to spoil that. I'm not going to let anyone know what you were thinking about running. But as someone that has experience with a handful of factions, you're not really dedicated to one. How do you take the losses of playing those different factions, and then, was that a factor in you maybe moving on to the next one?
To be honest, I've played the game so much. A lot of that evolves from I won't say that it's being bored. That's not a fair word. After the initial Gen Con win in 2019, when I was maining Tyrion, a lot of the reason for the faction jump came from the guys in my club. Of course, we were still playing in person. Most of my games were done in person. I never played TTS until earlier this year. So everything I've played was in person. The problem I ran into with playing Lannisters and with playing Tyrion, my club was kind of just frustrated with the way that Tyrion dictates the game. And so I decided that I needed to try something different. I went to Starks because I played against them at Gen Con. I played 6 of my 7 games against Starks at Gen Con, and I won all 6 of them. So in my mind, in 1.4, I didn't think Starks were that powerful. Now, remembering this is 2019 around August. So I thought that some plays were left on the table. I thought some key pieces were left on the table. At the time, nobody was really running Robb Stark as a commander. It was Brendan Tully, a little bit of Howland, some Great John Umber, but very few people were picking Robb. And this remained true even into the Energy event, where Robb was actually rated as Stark's worst commander. So I really liked Robb from the very beginning. I looked at his cards. I saw a lot of potential. I saw the power of tactical regroup with Flayedmen. At the time, Outriders weren't what they are now. So I started running Starks simply because I felt like my opponents had left things on the table and my club mates were leaving some things on the table. Coincidentally, once I started playing Starks, the 1.5 update happened, and then Tully Cav were dropped. So nearly everybody was picking up Starks, and now they were winning games. Instead of going back to Tyrion, I chose to go to Night's Watch. I was using Othel. Nobody was running Night's Watch with Flayedmen, and I saw the power of Aemon's healing, and I saw the power of Jon's cards with Night's Watch. So that's how I started playing with Night's Watch, and then I kind of teetered back into Starks and some of these other factions. But essentially, I really deeply analyze what my opponent is doing. I know every faction's tactics deck pretty much by heart. I know just about every unit stats by heart. Those who have played me on TTS, I don't use the cards. I don't use anything for reference. And I generally know how many attacks you have into me at every rank. I know all of your units' abilities. I know every card you can potentially play. So for me, I'm just kind of like a student of this game to a very extreme level, where in downtime, if something's new and been released, I'm spending of any downtime that I have reading up on them, reading into their cards, seeing potential combos that can happen, and imagining how I would play them if I played that faction. And I think a lot of that is what's led me to being a faction jumper. It's just like, well, I've seen this list and I've seen this list and they're doing this, but I want to try it and I want to put this spin on it, and maybe this will work out. And so this is where my Courtney Penrose list, which I've actually had pretty good success with Penrose, but instead of running this 3+ defense army, I run a Courtney Penrose list that has Bastards Girls and things like this. And I just try these combinations out. A lot of times they work, sometimes they don't. But I just get a general idea of how it's going to be played and how it can be played and how it should be played by playing so many games against other people. And then I just try to put my own little spin on it. And then I give it a try just to keep myself fresh.
So we have Carl from West Coast Bannerman, who's been in a podcast live text channel that we have in Discord. And Carl had actually come out with a podcast that had a similar topic. So maybe Carl has a little bit of insight that he can add to learning to evaluate your lists and your losses. So Carl, are you able to hop on?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, this topic is like near and dear to my heart because I feel it's so important, not just for improvement of your competitive game, but just having like that right mindset of going into a game. And one of the major things that I listened to the first time I actually listened to it was on Big Top Gaming's video or podcast, and he was interviewing someone from Canada. I forget her name. Dang it, I should know this. But basically, the thing is sharing intent of your game. So you and your opponent just share before you start, right? Like, what is your intention of this game? Are you here to just goof around and have a fluffy good old time, which is fantastic to do, of course. Or do you have goals? Is this list that you're bringing to the game for a specific purpose, for a specific game mode that you need to practice on? Or are we going to, practice an entirely tournament concept so we both have two lists and we're going to roll for game mode and then pick a list simultaneously, etc. But having this discussion before a game is so huge. It just improves your game experience 1,000%. You know what to look forward to. You know how to treat the certain situations with your opponent, pivoting, measurements, etc. It depends on level of competition that you're playing for that game, if you even need to care about it or not. But yeah, other points I mentioned earlier in the text chat was like preparation, which ties into beginning of the game. But firstly would be list building and preparation. Have a purpose. One thing about this game that is so amazing is the 2-list format. So you can have 2 lists in a tournament capacity, and each one has entirely different goals. So in order to tackle an event with so many different things that you could experience, you have 2 lists that can be built for different things in order to be ready for anything and everything. Almost. I mean, that's the idea, right? So this list that you're perfecting, that you're practicing with, what is it for? What game mode is it for? What factions is it supposed to be played up against? Is your faction dreading the Mother of Dragons? So maybe you make one list just for the dragons, etc. And then you have that pregame discussion, and then during the game would be like your note taking, like how Rossi was saying, he records his games. That's obviously like the best way to do it. The best way to do note taking is just completely record it.
Right.
But there's also, yeah, go ahead.
Go for it. No.
Oh, there's also just, like certain things you could just jot down so you don't forget, like, oh man, I was really, my strategy was this, and this unit was supposed to do this, and it just did not do that. It was supposed to hold down this, and it was supposed to hold down this, what's the word? Hammer, and how come I can't think of it? Anvil. It's supposed to be the anvil. Yeah. Thank you. And it just did not complete that task, right? Because of this and this. And you just jot that down real quick. Like, oh man, this opponent's tactics card was way more powerful than I thought it was going to be against my list. So need to watch out for that next time. Just these little notes. And then your after game review. You go, okay, so I had this intent at the beginning of this entire process. I had this intent with list building. My list was supposed to be able to tackle this, so my practice game was meant to do that. So I went into the game, I put myself into that situation with this list, and something went wrong. This, and this, and then you can reassess your list building, and then rinse and repeat. And then you go, okay, I'll tweak this, I'll tweak that. Let's do this same process again, same situation. Now my list can disrupt those charges if you're Lannister, like Rossi was saying, or maybe my list can now be sure to get in with those charges if you're Targaryens. Let's try it again, and then notes again, and then rinse and repeat. So those are some highlights that I was sharing in the text chat.
Yeah, and to kind of speak to that a little bit, the only time you and I've ever played, right, was when you were playing Jorah in the ELO event we played. Might have been the Patreon Cup. I don't remember. But it was one of the earlier ELO events, and you definitely mentioned you had notes on it. And I thought it was a great idea because the Free Folk matchup is so awkward for people. And Targaryens were kind of in a precarious place, considering it was without MOD. So it was real good to hear that, and it was interesting to see that game play out. I managed to squeak it out with Weeper just barely. But another thing I want to point out in reference to your game, your comment, is that these comments for our listeners aren't just for competitive players. This is a great way to figure out how to make your fluff lists or your favorite fan reenactment lists. Like, let's say you're trying to do something similar to season 2 of Sunday Slaughter Battle Reports, where you're doing, story missions, or you're doing like a Loki Breeze Growth and Decay, a slow grow leaf to build your community up and things like that. And you're trying to build your players up either as a coach or as yourself. If you're honest about what the unit's job is, if it's a fluff list that runs Brienne in it, and you have to admit that she's only there for the morale or something, that can be okay. You just need to make sure you're being honest about what the goal of that list is, or the intent of that unit is. Fluff or competitive, that doesn't matter. The game state is still the same, whether you and your friends are playing a beer and pretzels game that's telling a story, or if you're playing a game that is in a tournament. So it's not just competitive players telling you how to become a more competitive player. This being honest with your performance, your unit's performance, and being objective about those results carries over into every war game anyone's going to play. This is the same for War Machine. This is the same for Guild Ball. This is the same for God Tier. This is the same for Age of Sigmar. This applies to every war game you're going to play, because they're all going to have a degree of variance because they all use dice. They're going to have a degree of inaccuracy unless they use a grid, like, say, God Tier. They use a tape measure or a whippy stick or whatever the ruler you're using. If they're measuring in, cards, you're playing Mercs, the old Mercs game with miniature skirmish game. It doesn't matter what it is. So to compensate for all those things, you need to be sure that you're being clear with what the goal was, and did you apply it the right way to have it achieve that goal. A unit will always underperform if you don't use it with what it's built for. If you try and chase a ranged unit with Rose Knights, it's going to be a bad time. I don't care how good the unit is. So that was my main point, is that Carl had some very good points about lists, having a nice little list of objectives, things you're testing, so you remember in your game and focus on what you're trying to learn or teach yourself and assess. And at the same time, it doesn't always apply to competition. Sometimes it just applies to just being a better coach to your community, or just being a cleaner player at times.
One of the things that helped me not only get better, but also grow my love of the game was because of my community, and they were able to help me get better as a player. Bob and Max were one of the two individuals that were able to say, hey, you could have built, this list a little better. Maybe next time add this in. Maybe that charge wasn't a good idea. You had this card in hand. You should have played that. It's important to be a good opponent. When we are talking about learning from your losses, it also includes being that person to help someone learn from their own losses if you want. What do you want to add with that, Carl?
I just wanted to have my recall moment of the podcast that you mentioned, and one of the big concepts, I guess, with winning while losing is kind of more of like a psychological one. And there's an acronym, and I've been searching my files, and I can't find my podcast notes from what I recorded, but basically, you go into a game and you win all the time, right? Like, what does that really accomplish? Is that game even fun? Is it even a challenge? It's kind of like in life, being in your comfort zone is not actually where you want to be. You want to have these challenges that you take on head on. And so getting into situations where the game is difficult and you need to play a certain way, or build a list inside of your faction a certain way in order to accomplish the victory is a great thing to do in general. Like challenge yourself, right? So losing is a win because you have now discovered ways to improve your game, right? And so it's just like a mentality of you get the loss and you beat yourself up, or you get frustrated and you're like, this game stinks or whatever. I was really unlucky. But instead, you go, oh man, like I bet if I did this next time, I could maybe swing the game in my favor during round 3 or something like that. Like it's just it's as a general note of it being like a different mentality than you see often, right? Just like a psychological concept, I guess. And once again, I wish I had the acronym I had for it. It was really cool. I'll have to pull up those podcast notes and share them later. But anyways, just that was it. Just my second point was just like coming into a game, like losing, you can just see a loss as a win as long as you see it in the right light.
Thank you so much for hopping in here, Carl. I appreciate your suggestions and not only that, your support too. So thanks, brother.
It's a pleasure. For anyone listening, I just became a Patreon to Sunday Slaughter, and I get to share my own thoughts in their chat right away. So I highly suggest it.
Okay, so one thing I also wanted to bring up was, I mentioned that Rossi is one of my sparring partners. We play often. We practice our competitive lists against each other. But one of my favorite things in playing this game is the time I spend after the match chatting with Rossi on how the match went. I feel like that is the time when I get to sort of analyze my plays and get some perspective from my opponent on what I could have done better. What are some things that you have seen throughout playing this game, Rossi, that have made you a better player?
When you analyze a game, the crucial moments, at some point you come at a spot where you doing the play or the component do the play. Maybe you're a star player and you're starting with a hand, you have sudden charge, you have winter is coming, and you have devastating impact on your hand. The best move is maybe to go on the ladders or go on the horse, and this depending totally what the opponent has brought on the table. You know what I mean? It's so hard to tell directly what is a good play or what is a bad play. This all depends on the situation you're just in.
Yeah, I think he's also saying too that like it's about assessing tempo as well.
Do you think you should expect that all the guys have all the cards he needs, or should you expect that he has nothing at all?
Are you the type of person that plays like that, where you just assume that they had every card in hand that they would need?
No, differently. I assume that he has nothing. You're never for sure which card he has, but you should expect when he has the card that you have a counterplay.
All right, so Brett, do you have any overall tips for players that are trying to get better and learning from their losses?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned with Rossi, I know me personally, this is my take on it. And I think a lot of people see it this way as well. I think it's a pretty good way of doing anything competitive. When I got into this game, I made it a point to go straight up to the best guy in our indie group and challenge him. And he kicked my teeth in. And then I said, well, next week we're going to play again. And he kicked my teeth in a little less badly. Then I played him again, and it was a little bit less badly. And then eventually I started beating him. And so I think the point of that story is it relates to anything. If you're playing football and you want to be a better lineman, you should try to block the best defensive lineman that your team has. And that's the same with this game. If you want to get better at this game, go find the best player that you know. Everybody in this community is super friendly. I'm not just speaking for myself. It's everybody that I know and play with. If you're listening to this and you're new and you want to get into TTS, go message Rossi. Go message Chris. Go message myself. We'll play with you. And maybe you'll lose. And then after that, pick our brains. Pick the brains of these top players. Get in people's ears. Get into these content creators' ears. Try to figure out from them what they're doing, because these are the experienced guys. The guys that are making quality content, they're the experienced guys that have played this game. They've been there. They've played in tournaments. They know this meta. They know how to analyze games. They're the people that you need to talk to. Play the game and make your mistakes, and then maybe ask them, like, well, what would you have done in this situation? You can play this type of a game too. Like, well, we're going to openly talk about our strategies, and I'm going to suggest to you, like, okay, you can make this move, but if I have a swift advance or something like this, I'm going to be able to flank you. Or if you align here, I'm just letting you know this unit can see your flank. If you align over this way, I can't charge you. And it's things like this that help you develop as a player. I don't necessarily think you learn just from getting your teeth kicked in and then you go home with your tail between your legs and you can't figure out why. You need to be asking the questions like, well, what was my big mistake? Or picking up on that from yourself. You know, you make this charge and their next move is, well, you've given me your flank, I'm going to charge your flank. You probably learned that lesson. Some of those lessons are a little bit more obvious. There's more subtle lessons to be learned. So if you're trying to get better, the best way to get better is to play the game or else to watch these content creators. I know I watched Ben from Blitz Minis a lot when I was a very new Lannister player. He was playing Gregor and he was like beating people's faces in with Gregor. And so I wanted to figure out what he was doing and how he was playing this army and not getting, you know, blown apart. And you learn things from that. So just be a student of the game.
Yeah, I really hope that our audience gets at least, you know, a few little nuggets from all the comments that you guys made. Personally, if I have a unit that's in charge range, I'm going to charge. I don't care. I'm praying for that 6. Charles, do you want to close out with any of your thoughts or, you know, last minute words of advice?
No, people basically covered it. We covered a wide range of topics, right? Of way of analyzing your own gameplay. Thing that I guess to take away is that this isn't just about losing either. Like Rossi mentioned, he records every game. Even when he wins, he goes back and he looks at, I still did these things out of order and I put myself at a risk I didn't need to take. Because if it didn't work, then I didn't have that card as backup for the next turn or I was out of position. So those things are really big takeaways too, right? Those are some of the misplays I've been making in the World Cup is that when things don't go according to averages, because I mitigate the effects and things like that. So I'm really going, I need averages to a slight dip, but if I have a major dip in dice and my opponent spikes and nothing happens my way, well, now I'm out of position and I'm down a resource that I probably didn't need to. So, and that is the margin of error that causes me to lose, especially playing in something like the World Cup regionals, which has a lot of high caliber players in it. So even when you win, there's things to look at. And when you lose, obviously there's definitely things to look at. So, you know, remember to have fun, but be open-minded, and there's always room to grow as a player. You know, and like I said, as a community member, participating in your community. So that's basically it. Play more games, be open-minded, be honest with yourself about your play style and your performance, and you'll get better just by playing more games.
Awesome. All right, so this next segment, I haven't told anyone that's a guest on the show what I'm going to be doing here, but we're going to do a little bit of trivia because I've got some heavy hitters on the show today, and I want to test their knowledge of the game. So if you guys are okay with it, I'm going to call on each of you to answer a question regarding Song of Ice and Fire.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
All right, we're gonna actually start off with Rossi since he's our special guest. Are you ready, Rossi?
Oh gosh, what's coming up now?
All right, so you have to answer this question. Other than Walder, name 3 ways someone can completely shut off a unit and its attachments.
You're playing Ruse.
Okay.
You're playing Night Watch with what does it mean? Georg. You play you play Targaryen with Barristan. That's 3, isn't it? I don't have to think about this. And you play Lannister, Intrigue and Subterfuge.
Well, Intrigue is just an NCU, but I'm surprised as a Lannister player that you didn't say Tywin.
Right. Shit.
But you did get 3. You did get 3, so well done. All right, that's 1 point to Rossi. All right, Charles, you ready?
Let's go.
What is the maximum amount of attachments a unit can have? This is including enemy attachments.
Ooh, including any attachments? So technically, you can have as many turncoats as you want in a unit, but the ability doesn't stack, which is pretty bad. That's a gray area in the rules, and you shouldn't do that. Enemy attachments, maximum units.
Ooh, don't look at the chat. Don't look at the chat.
I'm not looking at chat. Thankfully, I'm on mobile, so I can't see chat. I figured they were saying stuff. It is, let's see, so in Free Folk alone, you can hit 3 reliably. You get 4 with an enemy attachment.
All right, I'm going to give you 5 seconds.
4 final answer.
Okay, now I could be totally wrong. Maybe I didn't spend enough time thinking about this, which was a while. So right now I have, in Free Folk, you can have Harma, you can have a Bannerman, Skin Changer, Turncoat, and then you can have the Jamie attachment.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Mame Jamie. So, yeah, you can have 5.
Yep, 5.
Excuse me?
Mame Jamie was who I forgot. I knew you get to 4.
Is it not a possibility that the enemies just bring 12 turncoats and put it on in your unit?
Yeah, I covered that when I said you could technically take a full unit of turncoats, but don't do that.
Technically, you can have 12 turncoats, so that is a correct answer as well.
Yes, I was right. My first comment was right.
Brett, this one's for you. All right. What is the only unit that has the ability Motley Armaments?
Zorse Riders.
God damn it.
Yeah, I knew that one. You should have given me that one.
All right, so we're going to go back to Rossi here. There are 3 game designers that have their own models / artwork in the game. What are those characters?
Oh, I don't really care.
Most accurate answer.
I'll accept that as a correct answer. Brett, do you want to hop in here? I think you would know this answer.
Yeah. For the most part, I don't know all of them. Maybe. I know that Michael Chanel is a Dreadfort captain. Fabio is a Stormcrow archer. Jarl is why am I pulling a blank right now? Because I just said his name earlier today. Eric Lang. Jarl is Eric Lang. I believe Jim Ludwig is a champion of the faith. Or he could be the alt Sworn Sword captain. I could be completely wrong on that, though. And a red priestess is one of the painters for Simon. Those are the ones that I know.
I see. Now you're just flexing on all of this because I only had 3.
I'm pretty sure Jim Ludwig is one of it's either the alt Sworn Sword captain or the alt champion of the faith. I could be wrong, and it might not be Jim Ludwig, but I think that's one of them. But I know the 3 for sure: Fabio, Michael, and Eric. And then I know one of the Simon painters is a red priestess.
All right, nice. Okay, so we're gonna go on to Charles here. So, what unit has the order Reckless Heroism? Which is when this unit declares a charge action, this unit suffers D3 wounds, but auto counts as rolling a 6 for any charge distance roll.
Oh, come on, I read this the other day.
Rossi says he knows.
Yeah, I bet he does.
This is what I get for asking a free folk player these questions.
Right? I can't take any of these units. I'm pretty sure it's a neutral unit. I could be wrong.
All right, Rossi, do you want to give me?
What else you got?
Think about the Baratheon. It's an attachment.
Oh, it's an attachment. Baratheons are slow. I don't care.
All right, so the answer is Devin, and I don't think I've ever seen him on the table before.
In my defense, contrary to popular belief, I didn't get into this game until like August, and I've only just recently played my 50th game. So I'm not going to know all these ridiculous attachments that haven't been played in 2 years.
Just got a few more here. This is gonna be for Rossi. What are the 4 abilities given by the Kingsguard banners?
The abilities? Oh, okay. Now I understand. The banners.
Yes, the banners.
You can do free movement. You can free maneuver. You can get 1 banner for crit blow and thundering, 1 for a panic token and wishes, and 1 for the vulnerable and the panic vulnerable and weakened token, I guess.
Nice one. You got it.
Big comeback.
Lannister player.
Free maneuver or retreat, but we'll let you have it.
Shit.
All right, Brett, this is for you.
I'm ready.
Name three characters that have overrun.
As a card or just as in order?
Order.
Tormund the Commander. Great John Umber's Attachment. Overrun as an order.
All right, you got 3 seconds.
Shit.
Charles,
Huh?
help him out. Charles,
Your
help
boy
him out.
No. don't time me out. I should know this.
You should, absolutely. You've memorized every card.
Remember, this is not a card. It's an order.
Right. In order. Mm-hmm. Oh my god, I'm so... Tormund's Commander. Great John Umber's Attachment. Oh, fucking Mounted Behemoth, duh.
Well, it took you long enough. All right, this last question here is going to be for Charles. What character has the flavor text, I count no day as lived unless I have loved a woman, slain a foeman, and eaten a fine meal?
Oh man, sounds like a Braun quote.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a guess of who that might be? It's not Braun.
Ooh. Say the quote again.
I count no day as lived unless I have loved a woman, slain a foeman, and eaten a fine meal. Come on, guys. Who's the biggest Romeo in A Song of Ice and Fire lore?
Yeah, is it like Tormund's Attachment has it on there or something?
All right, I'm just going to come out and say it. That was Dario. That was Dario's flavor text. I'm disappointed in you guys.
Nice. Okay, you got me.
All right, well...
Again, I can't take any of those units. I don't care what their card says. I don't even get to look at them. I don't even look at the cards. I can't run them.
Closing out the show, let's do a quick recap of our World Cup results currently. Let's start off with Rossi. You said that you took a loss in this round 4. How have you been doing so far? I mean, I think you're 3-1.
Yeah, it starts with a very, very bad matchup for you. It was for Ryoko. I was so afraid that I would lose my first game in the World Cup. It was a very hard game. I could not sleep the whole night because I was so exhausted. I just was laying in my bed and could not sleep anymore. Just laying awake and then go to work. The next 2 games were against, I think it was one Berthian, and I think she failed all the panic tests with Melisandre, so was okay. The last one, it's so sad because you're thinking about a list and you know that a lot of people will play Mothers of Dragons, and I think it took 24 hours to bring this list with Eddard. I thought, okay, I do a double activation. I just go in. I use double Winter is Coming for the first charge and the second charge, and then I can delete 2 units. I was expecting this, but he just was playing much better than I do. I was so disappointed. But yeah, that's life. Hopefully I will win my last one and go to the finals. But you're also great players. Maybe I will match up you as well.
Well, I can't speak for the rest of the Sunday Slaughter crew, but I'm for sure rooting for you to make it to the next round. So good luck, man.
Thank you.
All right, Charles, we'll move on to you.
Well, my top 8s are looking pretty good. I'm not looking pretty good. I got Team Rossi here on my top 8, so I'm pulling for him. But yeah, so last week I told you guys I punted my round 2 game, and I'm now the new punter for the Saints. Well, this week I upped my game and I punted a new record long yardage. So I'm immediately getting called up into the Super Bowl. I'm gonna be kicking for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So maybe Tom Brady can carry me to a win, because Lord knows I'm not doing too hot in my bracket. But yeah, so I took a loss to Rowan, who's a good free folk player. There was a lot to unpack there, and I've kind of covered a little bit of it in our conversation. Puts me at 1-2, which is a really bad feels, to be honest. Technically, if I get crushings in the last 2 rounds, I can still top. So I have a lot to push out in the next 2 rounds, but it's not out yet. So at the moment, I'm trying to game plan for Starks this week. It's a very fortunate game mode for Free Folk. It's Feast for Crows. It's probably our best game mode, in my opinion. Other than maybe old Clash of Kings, where we just brought stuff back constantly. So I'm feeling okay about the matchup. Just need to get some reps in because I don't play enough Starks. But other than that, I'm a long shot odds. I'll probably take 9th on my best effort just to spite myself kind of thing. I'll probably lose by a tiebreaker because my losses were crushing losses and not even narrows. So as I mentioned, even without luck, if you play well, you can at least help your tiebreakers. And I'm a living example of not doing that in the last 2 rounds. So it's not looking too hot for me at the moment. What about you, Chris?
So yeah, my last match I won. Fortunately, I was playing against a very good player, a Zabrathian player named Con Artist. I had the luxury of having had played the new game mode once. The game mode was wins a winner for round 3, and he was mistaken and thought we were playing the old version, so he was completely unprepared. So I feel bad about that. But I did win. I got a crushing win. So right now I'm 3-1, and I'm gonna try to win these 2 next matches to hopefully make it to the next round. And then we can't forget Brett. You want to give a quick little update on your World Cup results?
Sure. Yeah. I drew into the Stark Mirror first thing. It was Gamma. He's a solid player. The first game of TSL, he knocked off Larks, which is just a big, big scalp to claim your very first game. Stark's phenomenal, arguably one of the best Stark players in the entire world. That said, it was a mirror-ish match. I know that you call the Starks on Stark a mirror match, but a mirror match is more when it's basically the same lists. He took a very different take on Starks, where I'm spamming Sworn Swords. He was spamming ranged units. It could have been problematic. I was able to do some tricky play with Go Down Fighting and purposely triggering it with Stark Fury to finish off a unit of Outriders. I got lucky and cleaned it up that round before things got hairy. Then the next round was in against Rowan, actually. I was terrified of this match. I think all of you know that I was pretty down in the dumps about playing this into Trapper spam. I was very concerned that I was going to drop this game. He ended up running the double Mammoth list, and I had both Mammoths dead in round 2. So it was not horribly difficult to pick it up after that. And then, yeah, this match against Ray. Ray is, I know he's a sparring partner of yours, Chris. I've played him a few times. Similar to Rossi, he's just absolutely a pleasure to play, a pleasure to talk to after the game. And yeah, he just got the better of me. He tilted me, and his list is very well designed. It's deceptively better than what it looks, and yeah, he just got me. So luckily it was a narrow loss, but unfortunately it pushed me into a Stark on Stark with Ariakis this week. So it's gonna be interesting, Ariakis and I. So first time playing him in a tournament competitive kind of setting. We've sparred each other, just kind of practicing lists. I pretended to be Larks and do my best Larks impression for Masters. And then other than that, we haven't really played a whole lot. So this should be pretty interesting.
Awesome. So that's the World Cup update from the Sunday Slaughter crew. Closing out the show, let's just do some quick shout outs. Charles, do you have any shout outs you want to say?
Yeah, thank you to the stats guys, actually, because I went through and bound some of my matchup against Mickey after I lost and things like that. And they're always there to kind of help me pick apart my games and look at matchups and stuff. And then kind of dig through data. I've already kind of, buried some of my, distracted myself from my morning of my loss with some statistics and stuff and looking at things and game modes and stuff like that. So it's always nice that there's so much content out there not just, I podcast and stuff like that, but I use the stats site and stuff a lot just to ramp up my knowledge base, right? Like I said, I haven't been playing the game nowhere near as long as like Brett and you guys, some of those guys have, but the only reason I can even talk about the game, the types of conversations we have, is previous wargaming knowledge and just all of the free available content that you guys, Sunday Slaughter Battle Reports, the stats guy, stats chat, Tourney Grounds, George from Three Sales, Van and his stuff, Blitzmanes, all the guild guys. So that's my shout really, is the entire community of content creators that kind of really helped me dive, full speed head first, no looking back into the hobby back in August when I was really picking up stuff. There was so much available, and there still is so much available, that it's basically been my only hobby for the last 7 months or so. So that's my shout, is check out more content, listeners, from everybody. It's a good time. There's a lot out there. Everybody does something different. And at the end of the day, it's real fun.
How about you, Rossi? Do you have any shout outs?
Yeah, I do. I want to give a huge shout out for my friends at Tabletop Wardens and my home tabletop group, Privateer Poser Boys. I really appreciate all the work the community is doing here. Thanks a lot. And yeah, thanks for having me here.
And yes, thank you to Rossi. Thank you to my co-hosts, Brett and Charles. And of course, the biggest thank you to all my supporters and patrons. Carl, who stopped in today, he's my latest patron. He was able to chat with us live and also listen in live. So always a big thanks to you guys. And with that, we are out.